webinar. Today's webinar is on boosting your bottom line, the Bags of Money series, part 4. This is our last part in this series, and it's going to target the dashboards, specifically an overview, and it's part of Watching Your Money. My name is Boris Vilgorin, and I'm with McSilver Institute and part of CTAC. And I'm joined today by my colleague, David Worsnick, who's joining us from CCSI. Again, today we're going to focus on dashboards, specifically as an overview of dashboards, what dashboards are, what they're not, how that compares to reports, also some things you should be thinking about, and how potentially dashboards could work for you. This, just to be clear, we are not, and this presentation is not about how to build a dashboard, develop one, but this is really one, we want to start the discussion about dashboards, make sure folks are thinking about it, and also see how it could be helpful in the future, especially in a value-based environment, but definitely in a managed care environment, and in general in running a business. So before we get going, some basic housekeeping. Most of you probably have heard this before, but again, in case you have not, please feel free throughout the presentation to chat in your questions. That should be on the right-hand side of the WebEx. If you don't see a chat box, on the upper right-hand side, you should see a little sign, I guess, and name chat. If you click on it, you should open up your chat box. And please chat in all your questions to all panelists, so this way, we can all review that. We will have time at the end, at least we hope we'll have time at the end to answer any of your questions that we can. Also, what would be good for us to know, especially for future presentations or maybe even building upon this presentation, in addition to any questions you might have, if you can chat in, as we go through the presentation, your current capabilities, if any, as it relates to dashboards, you're thinking about it, or any challenges you have and needs as it relates to dashboards. Again, if you can chat those in, that would be great, and we can use that information to kind of also think how we can expand on this particular area of the presentations and so forth. And the last piece of housekeeping, just to let folks know, this presentation is already posted on our website at CTAC, so you can definitely access it already, and this presentation is being recorded, as are all of our WebEx presentations are, and hopefully will be available within 24 or 48 hours. But again, this particular, at least the slide deck, is already available on our website. All the other part 1 through 3 series of this is on our website, both the recordings and the presentations as well, and so we encourage folks to take advantage of that and let their staff, let your staff in your agencies know as well, so they can access it. So with that, we'll jump right into the presentation and start with the agenda. So again, we done the introductions, and we'll talk about some of the best practices, as I've mentioned, and kind of what is the dashboards and so forth. We'll talk a little bit about what you are going to need. Towards the end of the presentation, David will walk you through that, and then of course, as I said, we'll finish this presentation with questions and so forth. So, data reporting. So some quotes or some information just to keep in mind as we talk about data in general and reporting. So one, as it's underscored, you cannot know whether or not you are successful unless success is defined and tracked. So again, another way of kind of looking at it is you can't manage what you do not measure. So I think most of us, if not all of us, have experienced this when, elements or part of your agency or things that you want to know about, if it's not measured, it's very hard for people to seem to focus on or, even push for improvement. So when we start talking about measurement and talk about data and information, it's a key component in not only now, but definitely will be in the future as we move into different types of arrangements and different types of business structures. And again, the data reporting is the cornerstone of good business practice, as I mentioned before. And just to kind of, one of the questions that we always get is, what is really the difference between a report that I get today and a dashboard, right? Why do is dashboard just a fancy word for report? And it really isn't. There is a difference between the two. I think that the biggest difference, as we have found here, there's more of it, is traditional reports are very static. They're usually paper-based, and they usually can only display a single set of data at a time. Again, a report that has more sets of data, and there are reports that do have more than a single set of data, sometimes or a lot of times get confusing. People's focus is not there, or they're only going to look at one single set of data that might interest them or they like. And again, it's very static, and as soon as it's printed, it's outdated, right? Because most information changes quickly, especially these days, right? And so that's what a report is, and that's what a lot of us are used to and grew up with and still use. On the other hand, dashboard is really a new technology, and not so new in a lot of regions or a lot of areas of business, but again, something that allows us to rethink the way we report data. It's more dynamic. It's usually and should be more user-friendly in an efficient manner. And when we talk about dynamic and friendly, and you'll see in the presentation, a true dashboard is really, real-time data. As things change, the dashboard changes. Now, we also realize that with today's technology, at least in the behavioral health world, some of it might not be possible in real time, but that's something we should talk about and think through. And as close that you can get to real time and more dynamic and more friendly data and efficient, the better it is. And that's what really we want to push the system. We want you to think about and consider, because again, things change rapidly, and information that's more real-time and dynamic is important. So why dashboard? So this is a car, right? Dashboard, so we all are very much familiar. When you drive, you need a dashboard. This is how some of the cars might have it. So why a dashboard? Well, it gives us the current state of the most important information. Again, I think I would also underscore the most important information. This is not about giving you 20 different pieces of data elements, or 50 or 100. You got to think about the most important. It provides us warning for those conditions that need to pay attention to. It gives us information that can be seen at a glance, right? Because again, if you were driving a car and if your dashboard required that you looked at it for a lengthy period of time, then we would have quite a few accidents out in the road, right? So the same here, you want to be able to look at it and know right away what's going on. The information is easy to understand. It really should not require much training, or if anything, should be very little training. And it gives a comparison to something that you should be expecting, and of course, when appropriate, shows us change over time. So those are, the reasons for a dashboard. Those are for any dashboard, again, in your car. A lot of these elements apply as well as to your business. So let's break these down one by one as we kind of go through it and go through some of the examples here. Excuse me. So it gives us the current state of the most important information. So here's an example of revenue cycle management performance potential. Very simple. Again, you might say this looks like a report, but again, you got to think of it as electronic and dynamic when you log in and so forth. So it displays all revenue cycle management data determined to be important and displays current performance. So just to quickly go through this, if we look at the denial rate from all sources, You know, there's a benchmark data. In this particular case, the agency established it should be, 5%. The actual number is 4.2%. So it's in green. You're doing good, right? Much better than what you benchmark. Versus claims submitted on time, the benchmark, of course, should be 100%. The actual number is 93%. So it's in red. So one of the things as you look at it, again, and you'll see it throughout, and we'll reinforce a number of the elements of a dashboard, but just seeing the green and red right away tells you where you're doing okay, or doing good, or doing well, and in places where you really need to maybe spend a little time focused. It has only 4 things on it. It doesn't have a list of 100 or 50, and right away it tells you what the problem might be or maybe not. So here's some of the warning conditions that you need to know. Again, another example, and as I said, kind of, the red versus green. It's underscored here even more where you might have more elements. That's, again, if you had a report, you have to go one by one and kind of try to figure out what's good, what's bad, where to focus, where not to focus. So here's an example of, again, where values, meet expectation or exceed expectation, and where values are below expectation. And so this, again, gives you, not to go through each element here, because I think it's, again, self-explanatory, and that's what a dashboard should be, how things are working out. In this particular case, the surplus or the deficit that was expected is actually, in this particular case, it's actually on the money, but it's in red. And again, you can decide what color you want to display depending on each one of these areas based on, what your staff and your agency wants to emphasize and underscore. But one of the big components, as we mentioned, is the warning signs here. And it's information that can be seen in a glance. It does not require interpretation or analysis, right? So this is one version of a productivity discussion. In our previous presentation, we talked about productivity. We talked about, one way to look at it is billable hours, versus unit counts and so forth. So here's an example of billable hours. Again, there's a goal of it that was for this particular staff person, John Jones. Each data element is clearly identified, is an important component of this, of course. Your eye is drawn to those elements that are most critical. So here, I would say, December 15th seems to be something that at the lowest kind of billable hours and outside of, kind of the area here. Year to date and individual month data is easy to find and distinguish. Again, you want to be able to see it quickly and not spend time. You also want to consider, offering this to the staff and not just to management and supervision. So when John Jones logs in, he sees this and right away knows what might be happening here. And again, this, there might be multiple reasons of why, this is happening. It is not about to try to figure out with this data at the moment of why somebody's under or over their billable hours, but at least to identify any, again, issues and problems quickly. And also in this particular case, one of the components that's shown is the show rate. So interestingly enough, in an area where, again, if you look at December 15th, where John, his billable hours are at 61%, his show rate seems to be the highest out of all the dates or weeks indicated here. So clearly, if you look at it, you can quickly see that it wasn't about the no-show for that particular time, but what else was playing a role here that made that. But again, that puts you on a track to try to figure this out, and quickly you now know where the issues are. Again, information, as we just talked about, is easy to understand. It shouldn't be that you're spending hours in training people on how to use this or do this. or what they're looking at. Again, another way of looking at staff productivity reports, you can do it through the chart. You know, you can do it for most of your employees should, again, understand this information. So if you look at it, here the staff productivity, not only do you have a chart with a benchmark on top, which is the expected billable hours, on the right-hand side, you have a little table that also is informing you if productivity is going up or down, or you know, kind of keeping it stable and so forth. So you also can start looking at the trends and seeing, are there any trends here? Again, quick look at it, you know, a quick shot, and you're on your way to trying to kind of figure things out. For some instances, a comparison to expected value is important. We've talked about a number of times. This is, again, the revenue cycle management one we looked at earlier. And, you know, one of the more critical aspects of the dashboards is really the comparison part. It uses colors, as I identified before, to indicate variances in the dashboard. And in this example, the variance is the numeric difference, right, between actual performance and the benchmark. It's better displayed as a percentage of goal achieved. So again, you know, underscoring how important all of these elements, when you put them all together, you know, really gives you what a dashboard is. And you know, I know I've said this already multiple times, but again, you have to think of it, this is not a paper report that you're getting. This is online, more dynamic, if possible, real time, but if not, at least it gets updated maybe daily or hourly or whatever the capability of your agency might be. And of course, it shows the change over time, right? Again, this is a similar or the same report we showed. I told you, you know, if you look at the right-hand side of this, it's starting to show you changes over time, direction it's going. So it gives you June, July, August, and so forth. And so this way, it's not just a point in time, you know, but it actually goes through, you know, a time frame and tries to, again, to explain, is there a particular issue on a particular time? Is there a trend here, or is it consistent? So with that, I'm going to turn this over and pass the ball to my colleague David, who will take us through the rest of the presentation and take us through the end. David?
Okay, thank you, Boris. Welcome, everybody. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I think that although we're presenting this as part of the Boosting Your Bottom Line series and Watching Your Money, I think it really has a broader application for us in management in our organizations. Boris mentioned it earlier, the movement towards value-based and performance-based contracting, the increased demands that we're getting on data, the need to communicate with our staff to provide information. I mean, we're really subject to information overload these days. We've got information in all kinds of places. The trick is, the art is determining what is important and then bringing it forward to people in a fashion that is usable. The information that we need really is to inform practice, to improve quality, and to help us make decisions moving forward. So what we're really doing is trying to outline a way that you can begin thinking about how you're going to start communicating. You're going to communicate not only your staff, you're going to communicate with your vendors, your new partners, and the way that you construct and communicate the information and talk about your value is going to be extremely important. So who should be looking at data and what should they be looking at? I sort of broke this down into 3 areas, and we'll do examples in each of the areas. When I put together information, really there's information that executive leadership needs. They need sort of high-level information. You know, they should be focusing on the organization's key performance indicator. and across the different domains in your organization. So executive leadership should be focusing on finance and clinical operations, human resources. So your executive leadership, they don't necessarily need to know what the productivity is for an individual staff member at one of your clinics. But they do need to know the overall performance of the organization in one of those key indicators. You know, they may not need to know that Fidelis payments are 62 days and your benchmark is 45 days for receipt of payment, but they do want to know on an organizational level, is that becoming important? So the information they need is a much broader overview of the organization's performance. Then you have program management. Program management information is more focused and specific to programs that they manage. This is then you start moving towards more information, but it's still maybe not necessarily down to the individual person level or the individual payer level, but they want to take a look at what are the key indicators that they need to be able to evaluate the performance of the programs that they manage. And then there's a third level. Then this is where we start drilling down to the detail. This is where the supervisors, they need information that's person-specific, where they need information that's payer-specific. Information should be presented in a manner that supports performance and quality improvement. Our supervisors are really obviously involved with working with staff to become better at, if necessary, better at what they're doing, managing, evaluating and managing performance at a person level. So as we think about dashboards, there's really three is my way of thinking. In your organization, it could be 4, it could be 1. It really fits into the way that your team manages your organization. But when you think about developing dashboards, you need to be thinking about different members of your organization, different levels of leadership require different types of information. So here's an example of an executive leadership dashboard. So I'm a CEO of an organization, and what am I interested in? Well, you'll see here I'm obviously interested in the agency's financial performance. You know, so I've got 2 clinics. I've got a mental health clinic and a CD clinic, and I want to know the finance expense. Pretty simple. Here's your budget. Here's your actual. Here's your percentage. What are we doing well? What are we not doing so well? There's an overall picture and then a change in that asset. So I look at this real quickly, and I'm saying, oh, we're about 20,000 below where we expected to be at this point, and then I can start asking the questions. So to the right of that is turnover rate. So we're an organization here in Western New York that I'm working with, and we're experiencing a very high turnover rate right now. Some of the MCOs are stealing our clinical staff, offering them a lot more money than we can provide them. I just lost an IT staff to one of the MCOs, so I want to be tracking what my benchmark is in the current environment and how we're doing against that. You'll see here in this that our actual turnover rate is much higher than we need. That then starts the conversation of what do we need to do? How do we attract? How do we retain? Let's take a look at exit interviews. Why are people leaving? Is there, it comes to a point that, we're losing valuable resources and what we can do about it. Then to the left in the bottom corner, percentage of expected productivity with a trend line. And this data is on a quarterly basis. And so over the last 4 quarters, we've seen a fairly precipitous drop in our unit of service production. This is really designed to then start the asking of the questions. What's going on here? Well, it's not inconsistent that our revenues are less than we anticipated and our productivity is going down. But that's not maybe the answer to the question. But I'm able to glance at this and see two factors that are going on, and turnover is high. Well, turnover is costly. When you bring, you're transitioning caseloads, it takes people 3 months to get up and running. So as I'm looking at this, I see these three different metrics, and it's starting to lead me to some thinking about what we need to begin addressing. So if you then go to the right hand, consumer satisfaction. What was it last year? What was it this year? What is the trend? The trend is up. It's positive. Consumer satisfaction and experience of care is going to be a critical element that we're going to be evaluated on as we move forward. It's the quality, it's part of the quality metrics that people are going to look at. So then I'm not only able to see the finance, I'm seeing HR, I'm seeing operations productivity, and I get my billing denial report. So, my revenues are down. So is denials a problem? No, because I built in a benchmark rate of 5%, and my actual rate is below that. So denials is not leading to the loss of revenue. It's probably more the productivity side. So this allows me to take a look and say, okay, at least this is not, I know that this is not a problem. And then the average days and ARs outstanding, how far out are our accounts receivable? The benchmark is 45, but it's actually 63. And what's happening? What's going on here? We all know that with the conversion to Medicaid managed care, at least a lot of us are seeing delays in payments, problems with systems. That's maybe to be expected. It affects our cash flow, but it doesn't necessarily affect our bottom line. So here's an example of when you go and take a look at me as an executive leadership. How do I see a broader view of the organization across the different areas that I'm responsible for? So let's take a look at what might be a program management dashboard. All right, so now I'm the manager of two programs. You'll see up in the right-hand corner, I have an Eastside Children's Clinic and I have a Northside Adult Clinic. This is one of the more dynamic kind of benchmarking tools where I could go and pick and look at either the Eastside Children's or the Northsides or both of them combined. The little box on the right is called a slicer. This is just a small dashboard that's built in with Excel. So on the left-hand side, I can see what my units of service are for a month. I can see what my billables and show rates are at the clinic by staff. I'm watching gross cost per unit of service. I'm budgeted at 123, and I'm at 122, and so I'm doing pretty good there. I've got my payer mix in there, so part of what we watch, at least for us, is what is my payer mix? What is the Medicaid participation rate? How are our commercial contracts affecting our bottom line? Is there a trend there? And then the bottom one is more of a trend analysis. I look at trend analysis all the time. A data point in and of itself is important, but we really need to be taking a look at our data in relation to something else, in relation to what we expect, in relation to what last month was, in relation to what the last 12 months were, in relation to an industry standard. Information, I always look at information in a context, in relation to something else that provides the meaning. I see a small downward trend, but it's not significant in my productivity. I'm looking at my Medicaid managed care and old fee-for-service. That's about where I expected it to be. I see that I have sort of 86% in the billable side, but my gross cost is good. So And again, we try to look at things in relationship to others. And as a manager, these are the pieces that I'm watching and I'm tracking. And we go down to the supervisory level, and then this is a much more detailed level. I can look at individual staff. I can look at individual months. I can look at productivity. I can look at their hours. I look at their goals. I can see the percentage of their goals. I can see what their show rate is. I can even see what their service delivery pattern is. And we build this dashboard in a way that the upper two right-hand corner boxes are, again, slicers. So I can pick a staff, I can pick a time period, and this display changes. I can pick all staff. So it's really the tools that I need as the supervisor to address not only the performance as it relates to productivity, but I may be working with somebody around their service delivery pattern. And I need to understand by months what services they're providing, what's the mix of services. You could add anything to this you could add caseload information here. You could, in active cases, admissions to that staff for the month, terminations from that staff to the month, the timeliness of their record keeping. It really is only dependent upon what information is available to you, what you identify as key information. But the idea here is there's a lot of information in a relatively small space. And that's what we really just try to think about in benchmark design. They call it a footprint. This is a small footprint. And in this small footprint, I can look at each of my staff. I can look at every single month. I can look at their productivities. I can look at their trends. I can look at their service delivery pattern. I don't have to look at 6 different reports, one for each person, and the following the row across for the month. This is really the ideas in design. It's visual, it's dynamic, it's easy to change, it's easy to then ask questions and drill down into information. And so that's where we really think and talk about design. So those are the examples of at least the way that I conceptualize the different types of information that's necessary based upon your role in the organization. That doesn't mean that executive leadership would never look at the supervisory management dashboard or the program managers. But, time, people are time is constraint in this day and age, and few of us have much time. So the idea of the dashboard is tell me what I need to know. Tell me what I need to pay attention to, and give me the data that allows me to take a look at where we are now, where we were yesterday, where we are against what we expected, and what is the trend. Is it an upward trend, and I can go to bed tonight and sleep soundly? Is it a downward trend, and I'm going to sit up and start worrying about this? It informs where we need to take that valuable resource of our time and move it in the areas that are important for us. And again, the goal is to define that up front. What is the key information? What are the key metrics that we need? So, a couple things to remember about this hook on more is not better. I had a staff who was working in human resources, and we were talking about metrics, and we're talking about, well, they said, I've got some human resource metrics that I want to start bringing forward to the executive team. And I said, geez, that's great. So how many metrics do you have? And he said, well, right now I'm thinking through about 35 of them. And I said, 35? I can't make sense out of 35. And he said, well, I whittled it down from 130. I said, no, not 35. 35, you need your responsibility as executive leadership. It's like you have to find those 4 or 5, maybe 6 data elements that really speak to a majority of what's happening in the area that you're looking at. I can't make sense too much sense out of more than 5 things at once. So it requires a discipline as you think about building your dashboards. The addition, it goes to the next point, measure what matters. Figure out what matters. So some of the things that we've gone through today really is the way that we conceptualize what matters. What matters around your revenue cycle management? What matters around your fiscal operations? What matters? What are those key variables that are really account for 80 or 90% of the performance in your organization? My eyes glaze over, more is not better, measure what matters. And use your data to inform decision making. I mean, that's really what the data is about. It has to inform your decision. It can inform, and as we begin bringing more of the clinical data in, it should be informing our practice also. Data for, if you're looking at a piece of data and you go, oh, that's interesting, but there's no use for it. It's not going to inform a decision. It's not going to help you strategically. It's not going to help you go and bring forward a quality improvement project. And it's background noise. It has no meaning to you. So if you're not using your data, it's not informing your practice, it's not informing your decision making, then, you might be curious about it, but again, our time is limited, our resources are limited. We use our dashboards to key in on those pieces that are necessary and will drive the activity. They talk about, and I talk about this as having an organization that's data informed. Use your data to inform you of what you need to address and what you need to do. And this piece, accurate, timely, and easy to understand information is the key. Accurate. It has to be accurate, else you're making the wrong decisions. The other thing, too, is that as you start bringing forward this data to your staff, to your board of directors, to your payers, the worst thing that you can do is provide information that then you later have to go back and backtrack on. Walking to somebody and saying, well, that data I presented to you last month about how fantastic we are, well, we're not quite as fantastic as we thought. That erodes confidence. And in the environment that we're moving into, confidence is key. Data needs to be reported, needs to be accurate, and it needs to be timely. It's no good if you have a productivity analysis or a productivity dashboard, but the information in there is not available to you until 3 months after the fact. How do you do performance quality improvement if you can't see in real time or as close to real time possible how well you're doing? Because you're gonna have a quality improvement program, you're gonna have a brilliant idea, you're gonna implement it in 3 weeks or a month down the road, you can say, we're not making any progress. Well, you have to know that. You can't just beat that dead horse for 4 months and figure out that it's not working. So you have to be able to look at your data and structure your data to get it into you in a timely fashion so you can actually make those informed decisions, make those informed decisions on good data. And easy to understand, there can't be a lot of interpretation. You can't be adding in your head. I've seen reports where you go, okay, let's see, if I add up this and this and this, that comes up at 80%, and I think it's supposed to be 90%. Don't force people to do mental math. You may really make sure that you need to pay attention to that. So what do you need to create simple dashboards? I saw a question come through, are we going to help you do this? I'm going to go through this relatively quickly because we want to keep a little bit of time for questions, and also it's maybe not a lot of technical people on, but what are the key ingredients? You need data, you need tools, and you need knowledge. And the knowledge is how do you apply those tools to the data that you have. So data. I'm sure you've seen this before. In God we trust, all others must bring data. Factual information used as a basis for reasoning, discussion, or calculation. We've got all kinds of data. We've got billing system data. We have accounting data. We have payroll and HR data. We have scheduling systems, clinical record keeping systems. We have standalone information. You've got more data than you know what to do with, but for most of it, it's hidden away. It's in our databases. We don't know how to get it. We don't know how to bring it forward. We don't know how to shape it in such a way that helps us inform our decision making. But you have the data, so that, how do you get it back out? And there's different kinds of data. You see in pre-printed reports, printed reports that you create. You have canned reports. You push a button and your system generates a report. Some people have report generators that can go in and get ad hoc reports. Some reports, some data can come out in different kind of formats. Maybe you can send your data to an Excel spreadsheet or a CSV format, which is sort of a text-based format. Or you can get their data by directly connecting to your databases. Excel is a great tool for, you can have an Excel spreadsheet that looks right inside of your billing database and brings data out. That requires tools and it requires knowledge. But like I said, we have more information available to us right now. The secret is getting it out and getting it out in a way that's useful for us. Then there's software tools. You need application software. You need to connect to your data sources. You need to make changes to the order and format of your data. You need to be able to create tables and charts and graphs. And one of the real tools, most commonly used tools, is Excel. Microsoft's Excel. Excel has a tremendous set of resources in it right now, which I'll talk a little bit about, that allows you to collect, analyze, communicate your information. All the dashboards that you looked at earlier in this presentation, those are all Excel-based. There's all kinds of fancy tools out there for building dashboards. My rule of thumb is start simple. Start with what you've got, leverage with what you have, and I would venture a guess almost everybody has Excel. And that is my preferred tool for unlocking all that data that lives in your different systems. Now, and that's supposed to say knowledge. Somehow my graphic got moved over. So I think a basic starting point of being able to unlock your data is you need intermediate Excel skills. You'd create tables and use table filtering and summary tools. Some use of conditional formatting. Conditional formatting, that's how we get all those red and greens. You build rules. You say, okay, if my variance is over 100% or over 95%, make it green. I don't have to pay attention to it. You build rules within your benchmark, within your tools to help you format your information in the ways that we talked about. And you create charts and graphs. Charts and graphs, they give you that longitudinal view, what's happening over time, what's my expected, you can add a trend line to a graph very easily. For all you folks who remember your statistics, linear regression analysis. It's a push of the button, and you can then take that trend line and project it out. Project it out for a quarter, for half a year. I use those projection tools all the time when I build my budget. What do we do for the last 18 months? Where do I expect my next 12 months to look like? So these are sort of the intermediate skills that you need. And then advanced Excel skills. These are their business intelligence tools. Microsoft Excel has done what I believe is a fantastic job in the last 3 or 4 years of bringing down to the desktop some pretty powerful analytic tools, certainly outside of the scope of this presentation to go into it. But if you're really interested, take a run at pivot tables. That's a way of summarizing large data sets. pivot charts. It's taking that aggregate data and making charts and graphs out of it, making the data connections. That's why I talked before, pointing right to your data sets and getting the information out of that. So, I think sometimes when we think about dashboards, we think about these expensive tools and these really slick kind of presentations, and you see these all the time. I'd suggest that we all sort of throttle that back a little bit. Let's take a look at the tools that we have in our desktop. Let's take a look at the presenting information in a better way, and let's think about training our people up. And then very advanced skills, Power Query, Power Pivot, Power View. These are the Microsoft Business Intelligence tools. Again, these are the high-level tools. These are the high-level analytic tools and the query tools, and they're sitting on your desktop. So where to start? Unlock your information. Run the reports already in your system. Review them for accuracy and useful. If you have a report generator, train somebody on how to use it. Learn how to export data, get yourself trained up, get yourself trained in Excel. Consider taking a position. Find somebody who's interested. Find somebody in finance who knows Excel and see if they're interested in working a bit more on the data and the data analytics side. But start today. Your ability to collect, monitor, analyze, and report data is going to be critical to your organization's success. So I know we went through a lot through here, sort of outlining what we believe is best practice, talked a little bit about the different levels of data, talked about some of the tools that are available to you, and hopefully have inspired you to take a look at what you've already got on your desktop, take a look at the capabilities there, and get this project started moving forward. So in that case, Boris, we could have a few minutes left. I only went over my presentation by 2 minutes, so if we have some questions that you've been taking a look at, let's see what we got.
Sure, great. Thank you, David, for the presentation. We definitely have a couple of questions, and again, just wanted to let folks know to chat those questions in. So one, just again, as I've mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, because this was one of the questions that we got. This presentation, again, as I mentioned, was not meant to teach people how to do this. We do want to gather comments from you if there's interest on it, or other, trying to find out what the needs are. Please chat those in as well. We are thinking on, future presentations and looking through some possible options as it relates to more how-to, even though, I think David touched upon some possibilities. Again, just to underscore, this presentation was not meant to teach people how to develop a dashboard, but just get the ball rolling in that sense. And also, as you heard both from David and myself, a lot of it also starts with identifying the information you are actually able to collect, and also talking about, what's important to you, and I think those take time as well. So there was another question that came in, I think, in one of the presentations, or one of the slides, I should say. It looked like there might have been a mistake, I guess. It says gross number of, on the previous page. It was a reference to something that said 856,000 was actual compared to what was collected, and why was it in green. So let's see if I can quickly find that. David, you still have control of the presentation. Can you just scroll and see if we can quickly find
I need a better quality QA process on my slides, I guess.
I guess it's this one right here. So I guess the first one says budgeted 856, but actual was 850, and it's in green. So I guess it should have been probably red.
I guess no, because that's just when I look at my gross, that's a gross expense. So I'm spending less than my budget. I guess I had my CFO hat on at that point, And when my CFO hat on is that I'm using my resources more efficiently, that's a positive thing. And this one at the revenue, I was expecting 156, but I've only brought, or 856, but I only brought in 842. So I'm under collecting on the revenue that I expected. I'm under expending on my expense, which is positive, which then leaves me with an operating deficit. Although I'm spending less, I'm collecting even less. So that's sort of, like I said, I had my CFO hat on when I put this together.
Okay, so it looks like the gross, it represents the gross expense, and when you're under, right. It's actually a good thing, right? So it does
right, and so I didn't follow one of my best practice principles, which was to make sure that everything is clearly identified. Gross there was a misrepresentation of what, or at least not a clear representation of what that number was.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for that. We also got a couple of comments just to share with folks. Definitely what we're getting is there's interest in future trainings, such how to develop and build dashboards based on information that's available, especially from different EHRs. Again, there was a couple of those comments, and a comment on that some agencies are looking and investigating, but currently don't do any dashboard, or don't have any dashboard, I should say. Any other question? We'll give folks another minute or two to see if there's any questions. And again, to just remind everybody, this presentation is posted on the ctacny.org website, and it's recorded and will be available within a day or so. So we'll give folks 30 seconds or a minute to see if there's another question.
While we're waiting for that, I guess one of the things we all struggle with this. I think that we in this industry are a little bit behind the curve in bringing data forward into our organization and being able to use it. I think that the point that I want to make, it will require some time and effort. It will require some knowledge and skills, and it will require some tools. We can't build this without some cost, and we need to find ways to find the resources. One of the things that I always suggest to people, particularly for our clinical folks who are responsible, walk down the hall and talk to your CFO, talk to your finance folks. There's a fair amount of skill set sitting inside of finance that are sort of siloed in there in a lot of organizations. See if you can find the folks who have these skills, rethink the way you utilize those resources in an organization. You may have a bang-up person, an advanced Excel person, and all they do is provide resources to finance. Get some cooperation across your different operating units and see if you can bring some of those skills forward and over into other aspects of your organization. You may be surprised. You may have some of this knowledge sitting in your organization already that's being underutilized.
Great, thank you. And just to add, I don't know specifics about it, but I heard from a number of folks that some EHRs are starting to develop their own dashboards within their systems, and so I would also recommend, in addition to what David just said, is to reach out to your EHR and talk to them about dashboards if they're looking to develop, have developed anything, or what their thoughts on. Because again, a lot of the data we're talking about, if not all of it, will be from your billing system, or your clinical systems or combination. So again, I think it's important to reach out and talk to them and see what's available. Sometimes you might be surprised as well. So with that, I think we're going to finish a minute early. There was no additional questions. And I want to thank everybody for participating in this webinar, and also if you participated in all of our webinars, thank you for joining us. This concludes our 4-part series, and we look forward to our next presentations and next topics. Thank you for your questions and comments, and have a great rest of the day. Take care, everybody.